virtually 100 years ago, opium was made illegal in Canada. They threw in a whole bunch of other illicit substances, including cannabis, again, which probably not many people heard of. And not long after that, many other countries, looking at what Canada had done, had followed and developed laws of their own, which prohibited these kinds of substances. So fast forward the clock to around the year 2000 in Canada, which then began to allow the use of cannabis for medicinal purposes. And what that caused, and on a very limited use, you could grow a very limited number of plants, distribution was very narrow. But what that led to was the proliferation of what some people called the gray area retailers. Frankly, they were illegal outside the law. But even from a distance, we as regulators could see all kinds of information was being collected from individuals, particularly because those individuals had to seek assistance for medical issues. And so, but all of this was going on in a gray area. So that kind of led us to October of 2018, when the government determined, and I have to say frankly, I mean, and happening in other countries as well, I mean, law enforcement had other things to do with their time, and enforcement of cannabis law, I don't think was high on the priority list. That said, you know, thousands and thousands of individuals had criminal law offenses for which, obviously causing all kinds of considerable matters, issues. And so the recreational use of the drug was made legal in Canada, as you mentioned, in October of 2018. So that's kind of how we got to that place.
Right. Okay. So what encouraged you? So that sets the scene, but what led to the initiative of you actually intervening and deciding to take an initiative to regulate it in terms of the personal data aspects of consumption? So,
as I mentioned, the medicinal use of marijuana up to this time was something that we kept an eye on. We didn't get involved in doing anything officially because these were illegal operations, frankly, and we weren't going to be seen to be condoning things by doing some sort of guidance for that kind of thing. Once, however, it became legal, it was apparent to us that different medical information was being collected, other kinds of information was being collected, and there were issues attached to that led us to want to give this new industry and new retailers some guidance. And to be frank, sex, drugs, rock and roll, and privacy, well, we've got two elements of that here. It gains the public's attention. It gains retailers' attention. And besides having some unique areas of concern, which we can talk about in a moment, it was also a very good platform for us as a regulator to draw to retailers' attention, to draw to consumers' attention, some of the important issues around privacy protection, protecting people's information, and in particularly in this unique area.
Yes. So, in fact, so it's associated with a leisure thing. It's like alcohol. Because alcohol is more visible and actually causes more danger in society, I think, than cannabis, because people tend to get overexcited with alcohol, whereas cannabis people sort of calm down. So there's a bit of
It was a pretty calm crowd last night, I thought, Stuart, with the alcohol.
Right. Yes. We didn't drink excessively. Anyway, what are the so you have? Could you talk to us about the main privacy issues you've helped regulate, such as payment card data, video surveillance in the cannabis retailers, and certain parallels, I think, with alcohol retailers?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and retailers are collecting a whole bunch. You mentioned the credit card information, which is rich in personal data, but like all enterprising retailers, a lot of these cannabis retailers develop loyalty card systems, so you can look at patterns of people's purchases. I mentioned medical information that retailers would be collecting for people who come to them to get information about what is good for this particular ailment or that, or they've been recommended by their doctor, and share that kind of medical information with the retailer. So that's really important, all of that information brought together. Like any retailer, a risk, obviously, that exists is a breach of that information. That has serious consequences for any individual with any retailer, It's particularly significant in the world of cannabis because although it's true that south of us in the United States, a number of states have legalized the use of recreational marijuana, California being one, and Colorado another, and there's a handful of other states. Federally in the United States, it remains a criminal offense. And so disclosure of that kind of information in some manner or other, whether by breach or some other unauthorized conveyance of that information, could put people in jeopardy for crossing the border, restrict them from going into the United States if that information becomes known to border officials. And that, in fact, has happened, and people have been denied entry into the country. Now, not just the United States, there are many, many other countries in the world where it's illegal. So that, the seriousness of a breach in that circumstances can have something well beyond what perhaps the ordinary retailer's information breach could have.
Yes, and the people at the border, they're federal officials, aren't they?
That is
yes,
right.
So
exactly.
Anywhere you cross the border, you've got to interact with the federal people, and they are ruled by the federal law, which says this is illegal.
That's
and
right.
if people use an American Express card, then possibly the process is part in the United States, and therefore there's a risk.
Absolutely.
And other credit cards and payment cards
Mm-hmm.
that could apply also, of course.